Welcome to 101. I'm Greg Bassett, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's a sad day here at PAC 14. We've got our good friend Dr. Donna Hanlin in the house to tell us goodbye. Welcome, Dr. Hanlin.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, there's been a whole slew of events here lately where people have stood up and praised you, and you have held back crying every time. So my goal is to make you cry here somehow in this interview.
Yeah, it has been very humbling, the many positive things that have been said. So.
If you had known that we all loved you this much, might you have stayed longer?
It was time. It is time. 44 years is a long career, and looking forward to spending time with my family and our grandchildren. We have 4 now, and 4, 3, 2, and 1 years old, and so it's time. It's time.
So you step out July 1 after 6 years, and you had agreed to, in your contract, to keep going, but something happened over the winter. Do you want to tell me what that was?
I always knew that I would do 4, and I may do 8, but actually in my contract, my second contract, I added the provision that at any point, as long as I provided enough notice, because I thought 6 probably would be the magic number. And I wasn't really talking about that, but, you know, I won't say that COVID didn't, present challenges, but it's not the main reason. Even before I signed my second contract, I really gave it a lot of thought because it is a very demanding job and it's very difficult to balance family with this job. And I'm getting older, and that has become more and more important to me.
Well, they read a proclamation yesterday at the school board meeting, which it took like 30 minutes just to read the proclamation, which listed your accomplishments. But there were some in there that mean even more to me that weren't listed. And one was having a strategic plan that we could all get behind. I really appreciated that because that way I could measure whether you were meeting your performance goals, which was great, and I think the community was the same way. You were able to develop a rapport with the county council, so it wasn't this constant fight over how much money to give the school board each year, the Board of Education. There's maintenance of effort, there's all kinds of rules about that, but there wasn't that tension anymore. And I think you increased transparency in front of that group. With certainly, we used to fight about whether to build schools or not. Remember when you first came here, the whole West Salisbury argument.
Right.
Those arguments are gone now, and I think that's to your credit that you have been able to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. That relationships and within the community and the council as part of that are critically important to me as a leader. I don't think that you can accomplish much without that. And so I worked hard at that to show them the transparency. But I agree with you that having a strategic plan and tying what we were requesting in the budget to that strategic plan showed them that we weren't just coming before them asking them for money just to ask for money, that we weren't really sure how we were going to spend. That I think made a big difference. Mike Dunn yesterday in his comments to the board spoke about the business plan, and that's really what that is. But it was a business plan for increasing student achievement.
And I left out one pre-kindergarten. I remember when you first were
Yes.
pushing the early childhood education with pre-kindergarten, there were some council members who said, well, we're not going to provide daycare for kids.
Right.
And within a year, they were like, wait, we get it now. So sorry, we never should have said that.
Right.
This is really important for our kids.
It is critically important, and I'm really glad that we will continue with those efforts, and as a result of Maryland's Blueprint for the Future, that expectation is built in. I've known for many years in my career the importance of building that foundation, and I'm really proud of the advances that we've made in that area, the increases in readiness scores, but most especially the increased access that students, 3- and 4-year-olds, have in our schools. We haven't doubled the number of pre-kindergarten students, but we're getting close to that. So I think that's been really important. And with the council, we just decided we were going to take them to the Wicomico Early Learning Center and show them that this is not daycare. And a number of them took us up on that offer, and I think that that was a turning point.
So 6, 7 years ago, you're sitting up there in Western Maryland, and you've got important jobs up there, but you're eyeing Dr. Frederickson's retirement here, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go home and maybe do that thing, try to do that thing. What did you think would happen? Did you ever imagine that it would be the trip that you took?
Oh, definitely not the trip that I took, especially with the pandemic. That just totally changed things. Nobody, would have ever predicted that or known how long it would have lasted. But yeah, I was happily working in higher ed, and remember the day that my husband said, the only place you said you'd ever want to be a superintendent is home. And my first reaction was, I'm happy what I'm doing now. So, but then the more I thought about it, the more I thought I do want to go back to my community and give back. And so, yeah, it has been a wonderful journey, in spite of all of the challenges with the pandemic and other challenges along the way. It's been, when I look back on it, it is a highlight of my career.
And not to beat on pandemic too much, but I know
Sure.
you wanted to do the arts high school. You're getting some momentum built for that. That was one of those things. The theme of this program is I'm wrong about everything. I didn't understand that, even though my son was an arts major,
Yeah.
but still, the pandemic stopped that.
Yeah, yeah, and I have said and will continue to say that that's one of my regrets, that didn't happen. We were really moving right along with, we had done an educational specification with a big community group about what would a school look like, an art school look like, that would then lead to further planning. And we were already in early conversations with to do a feasibility study on fundraising. And then this happened. And we decided, and actually I've admired so much what's happening with Junior Achievement and how they stayed the course and are raising funds for that, which is a whole nother really positive thing going on in our community. But I chose at that time, this is not the time to be asking people for money, and we really needed to focus our attention on what we were doing for students in classrooms. So it didn't happen, but I will tell you that, at State of the Schools this year, I mentioned that as one of my regrets. And there was a resounding applause when I said I hope that the board and the new superintendent will continue will consider that in the future, because I think the arts is so critically important. And seeing, it came back twice to me, not only then, but also Jay Copeland's return to the community and his involvement in the arts. And he made some comments, I can't remember whether you were there or not, but there was a small reception for he and his family before the concert. And he made comments about the arts don't get the attention that athletics do and so forth, and there's so much we can do through the arts. And so I had a little sidebar conversation with him and told him what we were attempting to do and how I hoped that the community would still come together and do that sort of thing, because he's a perfect example of what people can do through the arts. And obviously he's the extreme of the talented,
Right.
but to nurture that in students, that passion and desire for the arts is so important.
Well, when you see something like Rock and Roll Revival, if we didn't have that, all that talent would be there, but it wouldn't be deployed the same way. And the art school would be able to do that on so many different
Right.
levels. You look at how our different schools perform in terms of the bands. We've got great bands.
Yes, we do.
We have great athletics, and we have the great potential for art and even drama, comedy, theater type stuff. There's so much potential, but they have to have the vessel to act through it.
They do. And Rock and Roll Revival, I loved Rock and Roll Revival because I love music and the arts, but in particular music. But watching students behind the scenes learn to collaborate more together. I mean, they were in tight quarters where there was often drama, and they had to figure out how to get along with one another, or how to, collaborate to make this incredibly difficult task come to reality. And they did. And that, to me, there was so much that you learn that I refer to as the hidden curriculum of schooling. And so that is what doesn't often get mentioned about Rock and Roll Revival. It's more than just the outcome. It's what students learn along the way.
The person I feel sorriest for right now is Micah Stouffer, who's going to be your successor. That's going to be some interesting shoes to fill.
Oh, Micah is wonderful. I've known Micah. In fact, I promoted him to assistant principal way back when I was director of secondary education before I left and went to Washington County. And I knew then that he was talented. He's talented in many ways. He's knowledgeable and but very skilled at working with people. He just, as I've said to people, he's just good to the core. And this school system means an incredible amount to him. He is a Y-High graduate, and his children, Jenna is still in school, but his son has graduated from Bennett, and so anyway, Micah's going to do a fabulous job, and I was so pleased that we had two local candidates who were both extremely strong, vying for that position. Either one of them could have done an amazing job at that, and Micah will. And Rick will be right there beside him, working to support him.
What was it like for you sitting there, I guess probably not allowed to be part of the process, and trusting the school board to make the right decision? Was it difficult?
It was. It was. It was like, giving up my baby. Yeah, I mean, I had very mixed feelings. I wasn't part of the process, and I felt like I could better support, especially Micah and Rick, through the process if I wasn't in the
And we're
know.
talking about Rick Briggs, who's your chief academic officer. Sorry, for people who might not know, right?
Dr. Rick Briggs.
He was also a contender for superintendent, and then there was an
Yes.
outside applicant
And there was a
as well.
third finalist from the outside who I never met, but he seemed,
Certainly
very
qualified,
capable.
yeah.
But anyway, I wasn't part of the process, and board members were great about respecting that and keeping everything very confidential. But especially after I knew that they had held the finalist interviews, they had sought input from the community, and they came together, and I was pretty sure they knew what was happening. Then things got held up at the state level, and so that part was very challenging, because not only did I want to know who was taking over, but I knew that there was so much work to be done. And if it was one of the internal candidates, that there would be a domino, or could be a domino, depending on where there was a vacancy left, and then if that was an internal candidate who filled that vacancy. And summer goes by so fast that getting schools up and ready to open in August or September now is challenging. So anyway, yeah.
One of the things, and when people are throwing accolades your way, you've been very good lately at deflecting and saying it's the staff that deserves so much credit. And I think you really believe it is the staff that deserves so much credit. But if they deserve credit, it's because I think that you've helped create the good staff that we need to have a good school system.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I recognize that a team, that leadership is important in a team, but I am a collaborative decision maker, sometimes to a fault, unless there's some kind of an emergency situation where I just have to act on the spot, and I understand that there are times for that. But I have worked very closely with my 3 assistant superintendents and with my executive team, and they are outstanding at what they do. And I know that when we sit down together, either as a senior team with my assistant superintendents or with the whole executive leadership team, and I share what it is that I think needs to happen, I know it's going to be done, and they're going to keep me informed along the way. So they deserve the credit.
It's amazing how it's all changed. I mean, we went to school in the Stone Age, but there was none of that rah-rah stuff that goes on now, and that feel-good stuff that brings the school together. When you field day, the teachers just sat there and we just went outside for the day. I mean, but now everything's an event, and the kids are really encouraged. We weren't allowed to hug our teachers goodbye at the end of the year. I mean, you didn't do that. But that's the kind of bonds that have formed now, and I love putting pictures in the paper of these people in a very collaborative community effort within the school.
Yeah, it's really, really important. I mean, I'm a firm believer that you're not going to be able to teach a student unless you have a relationship with him or her. There's so many other outside forces that are vying for students' attention that teachers have to be, not only form relationships, but be engaging in their classrooms with what they're teaching. And we have great teachers out there doing that.
I have to ask, and I don't want to ask, but what's going on with this hostility? It's across the country. It's not unique to here, where people come to the school board meetings and they sort of vent, and they're doing it with a lot of misinformation, a lot of conspiracy theories in their head. We've got 23 people running for seats now, the 7 seats on the school board. What's going on out there? Can you explain it?
I don't know that I can explain it. Obviously, we've not been immune to that here in Wicomico County. We've had that happening here as has been happening across the country. I think some of it is politics. Some of it has been a result of what's happened with the pandemic, whether or not the pandemic was real, whether or not we need to be immunized, whether or not we need to wear masks. It just became, the school boards became the target for these culture wars of what's the right thing to do for students. And as I said in some final remarks at the State of the Schools this year, and I believe firmly that if there's one thing that I'm hopeful for as we move forward, with potentially all 7 board members are running, that vote, first of all, get out and vote, and secondly, do your homework before you vote, because it is so critically important that people are on the school board. Not that all are going to be in lockstep and believe just because the superintendent says you do something. Believe me, there are many debates behind the scenes, and often in front of others, but more often behind the scenes between the school board and the superintendent. But it's important that individuals who are on the school board are able to have healthy discussion, are able to work together to find the middle ground rather than going to the opposite corner of the ring, ready to come out fighting, and that these individuals who are coming and speaking at school board at school board meetings are also doing their homework, and not to create drama and present misinformation. Because again, as I said in my remarks at State of the Schools, all that does is take us away from our critical mission. We're spending time correcting what's being said rather than spending precious time working to support our schools with students who clearly had learning gaps from the pandemic, have social and emotional issues as a result of the pandemic, or that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. That's where we need to be spending our attention. So I'm hopeful that our community will vote and will do their homework before they vote, and that we have a school board that continues to work with the superintendent to make the right decisions on behalf of students, no matter what the politics are.
Well, one of the complaints is transparency, and I'm not sure I always understand that because it's my job to kind of go in there and look at numbers and look at things, and I feel like I've got good access to those numbers and that data. And as a parent, I had rapport with my kids' teachers, so I knew what the lesson plans were. They bring home the agenda every night. You could see what they were doing. That you do the homework with the kid. You know what they're up to. So I felt like there was enough transparency when I was in that process, but that's a constant criticism.
Yes. Well, I think that goes to the debate out there about what's being taught in our classrooms, and that parents need to be more involved in determining what the curriculum should be, or most especially what it shouldn't be. And I think that just requires collaboration with parents, and we do collaborate with parents, individual teachers, and some, obviously, it's human nature. Some are better than others at it. If we have teachers who are not communicating with parents, then that's obviously something that we're going to address, because it's something that's critically important. But you're right. Teachers meet with parents before school starts. They go through, this is what we're going to learn this year. Not necessarily in the level of detail of a daily lesson plan, but teachers are professionals. They are, they work with our supervisors and they work with our principals to make sure that they are teaching the standards of the Maryland standards. And we have a curriculum committee. We have an extensive process to approve the curriculum that's taught in our classrooms, and it includes board members who are on the curriculum committee before it goes through a first and second reading at a board meeting. So there's plenty of opportunities for parents to get involved in the process and become more knowledgeable about what's being taught.
I think one thing you've changed is putting the school board meetings online so people can watch them. And it used to be school board was like 7 in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, and it was a really awkward time as a reporter even to go cover it. But now it's available, and I think parents, maybe they're taking advantage of it, maybe they're not, but I think that really increases transparency.
Yeah, that was something, you're right, we did early on in my tenure, adding Swagit, so that people could see board meetings live. And just another way of being transparent, because that is so very important.
Just real quick on school safety.
Sure.
When you first got here, that was like the big issue, big. It kind of faded away a little bit in the pandemic, but now it seems to be another big issue.
It is.
Where are you on that?
It's something that we need to be working very diligently on, and I know that we will continue. We added that as a fourth priority in Chief, not that we weren't focused on it, but we felt like we needed to be measurable. And so I know that will continue to be, it has to be an issue for Dr. Stauffer, where we are making sure that our students are safe in our schools. Not only that we address disciplinary issues in ways that are going to be effective and meaningful and change students' behaviors, but that we are making sure that our schools are safe today, because we know that can be a real threat. And so we work closely with the sheriff's office and other law enforcement to make sure that we are hardening our schools to the greatest degree that we possibly can. Recently, I'll try not to get into too much detail here, but this is another kudos to the county council and how they do work with us. There was a glitch, an argument at the state level about what maintenance of effort would be this year. And what we thought would be maintenance of effort, or what the Maryland State Department of Education had told us would be maintenance of effort, ended up being not the reality, and it was just over $1 million less in our budget. We were able to make up for that in the budget because of another error that was made at the state, but the council still agreed to hold that $1 million for us, because we said we'd like to be able to use that to help with school safety. And they agreed, and they're holding that in a contingency fund so that we can put that towards increased cameras and whatever Dr. Stauffer and his team determine are of greatest needs. But again, kudos to the council for recognizing the importance of that and allowing us. That was been so easy for them to say, oh no, that's our $1 million. We're going to take that back and use it to buy dump trucks or whatever it is
Right.
that they would do. But they recognized the need and are working with us on that.
So we talk about it used to be difficult to build buildings, and Lysel Ashby, who is your building person, is just so much fun to work with because she's so organized and she explains where the needs are and why, and it really makes that process a lot simpler for people like me to understand.
Yeah, she's amazing. She keeps us going. And you're right, it used to be very challenging, but we're so excited about Beaver Run. I got to do a tour with board members several weeks ago of the new Beaver Run, and it is absolutely incredible, very beautiful, well-deserved for that community. And Mardella is now, we're starting progress with Mardella, so yeah, she's very organized and keeps us on track, not only with new buildings or building additions, but also with all of the other things that we need to do, roof replacements, etc. Yeah, well, again, the county council gets a lot of credit for that. We also are fortunate to be in a year where we're getting some good state funding for our capital plan to be able to move forward, and some additional funding through the Maryland Stadium Authority. And that's how we wanted to take advantage of having that ability to have that money from the Stadium Authority or the Built to Learn Act. And so that's why we needed to start earlier, which is not a bad problem to have, to start earlier. So yes, Liesel is on top of that, very knowledgeable about what's happening at the state level and takes advantage of every opportunity.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I don't think about it often, but yes, of course you think about it, especially when you're getting ready to retire and people ask you that question. But I hope that I made a difference in the culture of the school system, and built those relationships with the community, with the business community. And Bill Chambers gets a lot of credit, and Mike Dunn, for Bill coming in as the new CEO of the chamber, and Mike coming together to do the Education Foundation. And just, I am a relationship builder, and that, to change the culture within and outside of the schools, we still have a long way to go to change the perception of the school system. That is a very, very difficult task, but it's one well worth the effort. So that I'm really proud of the strategic plan and the efforts that we made. We've done a great job. Contrary to what you hear out there, we've done a great job of holding on to teachers. So, recruit the priorities of the strategic plan. I think one of the things that I really wish that I could have made a stronger impact on, and I think COVID probably really kind of put a wrench in this, was building better trust among different community groups for what we're doing in the school system. And again, that gets back to the perception of the school system. I'm a big proponent and believer in trust, and so I know that Dr. Stoffel will continue in those efforts because that's so very important. So those are just a few things. Early childhood, wish we could have done more with graduation rates, but we'll keep working at it.
She's Dr. Donna Hanlin. She's our departing school superintendent at 6 years. She's a friend of the program and of the newspaper and of the community, and we're thrilled that she had time to be with us here today. Thank you so much, Dr. Hanlin.
Thank you, Greg.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. Another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.